What's up, guys? How the hell are ya? This is Fourth Eye Podcast, back to you with another episode. I am your host, Ryan Webster. Returning back to normal operations, back to the normal podcast format. Let me guys know how you enjoyed the previous podcast, the soul-searching one. I was kind of trying something out. The main difference, if I don't articulate it elsewhere, will probably be that on the main series of podcasts, I will have a topic in mind, and I'll have thought about it a lot, and I'll have some actual ideas, and it won't be a new area for me. And I think with soul searching, that'll just be where I record, and those can vary a lot in length. I think what I might do with those is do some episodes where I record my thought processes, and so you guys can get a sense of how I'm working some things out. And part of the reason why I want to do that is so you can analyze the thought process and then get some of the ideas that I might remove by overanalyzing that might actually be useful. So I'm hoping by, maybe offering some of the raw stuff that I'm doing, that you might get some value out of that. So anyway, the topic for today, it's something that I've been thinking about a lot. Something that actually I've probably been thinking about for my entire life, but it's something that I've been thinking about doing a podcast on recently quite a bit. And the topic in question, if I can summarize it in a few words, is something like removing limitations on expanding your intelligence. And I use that language very thoughtfully. It's something I've been thinking about a lot, but over the course of my life, I think a lot of people have perceived me as being the stereotypical kind of high IQ intellectual person. And I've thought for the longest time that there's got to be something wrong with the way that we think about IQ and with the way that we think about intelligence. I've heard a lot of people say, like, oh, blah, 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 you can't increase your IQ, or it's very hard, or and so on and so forth. And everybody acts as if it's just true that IQ is something that is immalleable. And I don't buy that at all. One of the reasons I don't buy that is because more than just getting smarter, I've definitely increased my own IQ insofar as IQ is speed, memory, and attention. I've definitely increased those things over time. I'm not any slower or less effective than I was. And I've also seen enough data that makes me know that it's absolutely possible to increase the IQs of even people who start out impaired. And maybe that's everybody to some degree, but people who are on the autistic spectrum, people who are slightly, have sort of mild cognitive impairment and so on and so forth, or whatever you want to call it. And I've seen them have their IQs increased 20%, 30%. So I know that that's very, very meaningful. And I've certainly seen people with, average, middle of the bell curve IQs, 110, 120, increase their IQs by similar amounts. Now, something that's been talked about in the biohacking and the brain hacking community for a while is that a lot of the IQ problem that we've figured out from a biohacking perspective is that many people have restricted their IQs, be it in development or throughout their life, or with the decisions that they're making every day, via the foods they eat, the quality of the sleep they get, and then the toxins and so on and so forth that they're exposed to. And that makes a lot of sense. So much of the IQ boost that you get from exercising and sleeping better and cleaning up your diet and biohacking comes from kicking back those restrictions from your IQ and allowing the brain that you always had but couldn't access to activate. And I think that makes a lot of sense. The problem, though, for me, is that this still leaves us with our thinking anchored to this somewhat ancient, I think at this point, idea that there is a kind of set point on IQ. And to me, I really think of the brain as being even more fluid than your muscles and the tissues of the skeletal system and so on and so forth. Like, we all know that you can bodybuild and you can get very, very strong. And I think the same is true with your mind. I think someone like Stephen Hawking or Terence Tao or any of these people that you can name, the Isaac Newtons, the Einsteins, and so on and so forth, were geniuses, probably in part because they, like Ronnie Coleman, probably had some decent genes and potential to start out with. But more than that, they were bodybuilders of the mind. And I think that's incredibly important. Another problem that I think we have is I think that we make this somewhat arbitrary distinction between intelligence or knowledge in some sense and applied wisdom and IQ, right? Like, we know that somebody can score higher on an IQ test if they know how to use tools to, let's say, take some of the workload and remove, lessen some of the calculations that they have to do. So the actual score that you get on the tests, well, you can get a better score in less time, which is going to make your quote-unquote measured IQ improve. Now, again, the problem with having something like IQ or intelligence quotient, if like that's not obviously what it means, in my understanding, IQ is basically just speed, memory, and attention. And see, the problem is that if you lay it out like that, I'm pretty sure that everybody already knows that all of those parameters can be improved, right? Like, I know for a fact that if someone's brain isn't that quick, I can speed it up. I know for a fact that if someone's memory is not that good, I can make it better. I know for a fact that if someone's attention isn't that good, I can make it better. I can take them from focusing like an aerosol spray to the point of a pencil that's been sharpened 30 times. And I think it's not that people would doubt that if they saw the means of how you get there. It's that people haven't been exposed to that. And it's a very convenient idea in some sense to tell yourself, well, I was born with this set of genes, with this set of traits, and they're immutable. And so the life that I have and who I am as a person and where I am intellectually and everywhere else is set, and it's not my fault. And obviously that does a lot of things that aren't so positive. But without necessarily making this too long, what I want to offer you, instead of forcing my view of the world down your throat, is really I just want to talk briefly about priorities. And this is something that relates very, very well to lifestyle design, but I think something that is missed is that, okay, so you can be the kind of person who says, no, IQ is set in stone and blah, blah, blah. And you might be right that the data that we've had so far overwhelmingly supports that on some level. Just like you'd be right if you said that about saturated fat. But if you're like me and you care about results and you're interested in doing things that are interesting and being ahead of the curve, then you're going to dip into territory that is untraveled and that most people won't be aware of or necessarily agree with. And I think that's largely where we are with IQ. So that's why I use the word priorities, because you can have the priority that I have, which is I care about results. I want to be better. So believing that my IQ is basically infinitely malleable incentivizes me to work to not to prove that, but to get my IQ to the highest levels that it can go, and to bring my body to the highest levels that it can go, and become a master of the universe, goddammit, and live forever, and so on and so forth. Like, those are the things, and they're in the realm of sci-fi to some degree, but if you believe that they're impossible, not just today, but also 100 years in the future, and that they're things that we can never possibly do, you're limiting yourself greatly. So what kind of person will you be? Will you be the person who says, you know what, fuck it, I don't really care what the experts say or what anybody says. This is the game I want to play, and I'm going to play it because it's the thing that makes life worth living. Or you can be the person who says, well, the blah, 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 the data, and the people who are experts on that data and on the past told me that I can't, fucking flap my arms and fly, And yeah, I realize flapping your arms is a bad example because, like, it's stupid and yeah, it won't work. But I think being afraid of making mistakes. I mean, because let me put it another way, and I'm going to make this podcast fairly short because I really just want to leave you guys with that philosophical point. But put another way, it's like, would you rather stake all your bets on the data and then kind of pat yourself on the back for sticking to your guns when it's proven that you're wrong, which eventually, like, it will be, because that's how science works? Or would you rather fail forward? What's the worst thing that can happen to you if you start with the assumption that you can get smarter and you can get in better shape than you're in, you can make more money than you have, and you can have more than your neighbors, and you can do better than your teachers or your parents ever thought you could? Starting with that assumption, you can do and have a life that is 100 times more incredible than Mother Nature or anybody ever thought possible. And I encourage you to think about that a little bit. I encourage you to think about what it means to be limitless and to have a growth mentality and to be a disruptor, right? Because, even if you're more conservative and you prefer to be a little bit behind the times on things, which is, perfectly fine. I think it's important that you understand that it's up to you whether or not you're, building the cutting edge, or whether you're somewhere, on the dull part of the blade, kind of waiting for things to happen. So anyway, I hope that gives you a little bit of food for thought. Thank you for listening. I know this was a short episode, but I figured this is a good supplement to the other thing that I just recorded, the soul searching. So I will leave it there before my dog starts barking at passerbys. Thank you guys for listening, and I hope you have a wonderful day.